G'day fam, I'm Jen Teeson.
And I'm Kyla Musselman. And together we are the ladies of Tits and Teeth podcast.
Now produced by T+T Productions.
Oh yeah, we upgraded. This podcast is for every theater lover out there. We've got the juicy details and behind the scenes magic that goes into theater creation. It's fascinating.
This season, we are bringing you something extra special. We're collaborating with the Canadian Guild of Stage Directors and Choreographers to bring you a series of 8 episodes centered around assistant and associate directors and choreographers from some of the industry's best.
As always, our vibe is all-inclusive, educational, and inspirational.
So if that vibe's with you, then buckle up, legends, and away we go.
Hello!
This is very exciting.
Very exciting. Hi.
Hi, friends. So we're back, baby.
Jen and Kyla are back, in case you didn't know.
G'day. We will catch you up on all things like personal endeavors, Jen and Kyla, later, maybe next episode. But for now...
Because I know you need to know. You need to know. But
for right now, we need those podcast updates. What are they, Kyla?
Oh my gosh. Number one podcast update is that Tits and Teeth podcast is now being produced by T+T Productions.
Very exciting.
Number one podcast update. Number two podcast update is about this series that we're just about to bring you. And how did this series come about, Jen?
So it came about through our Assistants and Associates program, which is a huge collaboration through CGDC, the Canadian Guild of Stage Directors and Choreographers. Thank you to Canada Council for the Arts. There are previous episodes all about that.
Yes.
But we created an Assistants and Associates course where there were lecture series. They got Q&As. They got all of the wonderful things. But we just wanted to make sure that the bulk of the information got to everybody's earbuds. Why is that, Kyla?
Because we are demystifying the secrets of the industry, and we are not gatekeeping.
Come on.
No.
So if you enjoy listening to this, make sure you share it, get it out there to the world. We just want to make sure that everyone has access to this awesome information because it is pretty awesome.
It was honestly mind-boggling. I learned a lot during this lecture series.
Honestly. So we do have all of our assistants and associates peeps present in the Zoom room. So that's different for the podcast. They do. So there's sometimes they might reference the people in the room. They might check in on the people of the room. The people in the room who are very cool people, they might send questions and things like that. So that's new for this series.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we just wanted to tell you that.
This series is absolutely centered around assistants and associates and like how theater honestly is created from the other side of the table. But we wanted to tell you that it is also for all of the musical theater nerds.
All of them.
All of them.
If you're a musical theater nerd, it is for you, darling.
There are nuggets. There is info. There are tidbits. Put them in your pocket for later.
Take a little tidbit, put it in your pocket. Okay.
New song.
So it's for everyone, everywhere. This is the first of our series. We're so excited. It's the brilliant Steve Cota, who we love so much. He's a brilliant choreographer. He is a brilliant associate. And this is the first topic. What's that first topic, Kai?
The first topic we had to start off. What is an assistant and associate, and what do those jobs mean, entail, all of the above? Steve is going to let us know. Here we go, Steve.
Take it away, Steve. We are thrilled to be here for the inaugural lecture of the Assistants and Associates program with the incredible Steve Cota, who's talking to us about being an assistant or an associate today. Steve Cota is the founder and artistic director of In the Wings. He is incredibly passionate about teaching while teaching both young, aspiring artists and leading industry professionals. In the Wings was born out of his intention to continue that education through the pandemic and beyond. Steve worked professionally for over 20 years before transitioning into choreography and education. Steve has worked as a choreographer at the Stratford Festival of Canada and at the Grand Theatre. He was an associate choreographer for Here's What It Takes, Billy Elliot, Little Shop of Horrors, The Music Man, The Rocky Horror Show, Guys and Dolls. He was an assistant choreographer for A Chorus Line, The Sound of Music at the Stratford Festival, West Side Story at the Vancouver Opera, and is an all-round bloody legend. We love you, Steve. With all of that knowledge and insight in mind, can you tell us a little bit about your perspective or the point of view that you're coming from today?
Fake it till you make it. No, just kidding. uh, no, listen. I'm very excited to be here. When Jen and Kyla asked me to do this, I was like, for sure. I couldn't. This was of everything the CGDC was doing. This was the most important to me because I think being an assistant and an associate, when I started, there wasn't much education and how to go about doing it. So this is very important to me. And I just want to say that I don't pretend to have all the answers. I don't. I think that that's why this is so great that we are creating a community here that we can rely on each other to help answer the questions that we might have. I have a little bit of experience, and whenever I can share, I'm very happy to share. My experience, like Jen was saying, comes from being an assistant and associate primarily in musicals, and I've had some experience doing some choreography for some theater companies. A lot of plays, actually. I did a lot of choreography for plays, which I will say really tests you as a choreographer because actors don't let you get away with anything. And yeah, like I said, I'm really excited about this because I think this is an opportunity for us to build upon our community and have a shared knowledge, and we are able to learn from each other as opposed to before where we felt very, very alone. It was a very lonely industry trying to figure out how to navigate moving forward.
So we're about to jump into some rapid fire question, friends. Okay, Steve Cota. How can your assistant or an associate best serve you when working together in the room? Do you need a silent supporter, a vocal contributor, a sniper, somebody that fixes in issues in the room without you even knowing, a downtown poacher? Somebody wrote. Let's go to another room. You tell me. What are you looking for, Steve-O?
I'm a collaborative person. I want someone right there beside me at all times. I think it's important, especially when we're teaching people how to move forward into direction and choreography. It's the best way to learn.
Steve-O, what's one thing you wish you knew earlier?
Oh God, everything. Uh, uh,
Is that it?
yeah, everything.
Everything. Everything.
There was no handbook.
There was no handbook. Um, okay. When do you know a choice isn't working and it's time to pivot?
Oh, the cast will tell you. You see this face.
Perfect. Perfect. What's your leadership style? How do you run a room in terms of leadership style? Tell me, what kind of room do you wish to create?
I think I touched on it a little bit. It has to be collaborative. I don't pretend to have all the answers, and I'm only the best that I can be by surrounding myself with people who also have or who are like-minded.
Awesome. And who are your mentors? Who do you look to?
Well, I got my start because of Donna Fior. She saw me as her dance captain and then kind of moved me along with her. But I would say now my good friend Robin Calvert.
Ah, the best. We have a question. What was the biggest mistake you corrected after your first assistant or associate job?
Oh, my biggest mistake I corrected? Uh, oh, that's a big one. We're starting with that, are we? I think it's communication and like how you communicate with the creative team because and I'm going to talk a lot about that later. But that's always the tricky one. So how do you correct that? It's being able to adjust to personalities.
Owning it. So good. Who do you turn to for feelings of insecurity or imposter syndrome when you're leading a room?
I have a girlfriend right now who's very, very supportive. She really believes in me and what I can do. So anytime I start to feel that way, I would say it's that person. And also, I've been doing a lot of education lately. I would say that has become my primary focus and my students.
Awesome. Love it. Steve, what's your favorite dinosaur, mate?
Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Excellent. Very important information.
Yes.
Okay, great. We have a couple more questions in the chat that we will get to later down the line, but we're going to dive in today for assistants and associates. So just tell us, in your experience, what do these look like in practice? Talk us through how it starts and how you get that job all the way through to opening.
I touched on it a little bit. So getting the job, how do you become an assistant and associate? When I first started, I was a performer. I was in the ensemble a lot. I had a lot of opportunities to dance captain, and while I was dance captaining, I learned a lot of organizational skills that you need to be an assistant and associate. So like keeping a good book, making sure that you know what everybody is doing at any given time on stage, and that was noticed by Donna Fior specifically at this time, and offered me a job as her assistant choreographer. And she took me under her wing and kind of brought me along. And through that, I ended up becoming an associate because we brought on an assistant. Work ethic is another thing that kind of, if someone's a director of choreography sees your work ethic and you don't, you're not involved in the bullshit, and you're not involved in a lot of the cattiness that can happen in terms of being in the cast. I showed those skills to this specific person and showed myself to be trustworthy. Again, good organized book as a dance captain. I got along well with everybody, it sounds so simple, but it goes a long way. Is just be a kind human. And then as a dance captain, you also learned how to, again, we talked a little bit about it, is deal with personalities. I think as an assistant, and I hate to say this, but as an assistant and associate, I think it's the hardest part of the job. So getting the job, showing that you have those skills is very important, because you have to be able, like if a director or a choreographer is working on something and somebody comes up to you with a problem, you have to be able to kind of jump on top of it so that directors and choreographers aren't bogged down. And also in terms of, and who's here been a dance captain, assistant, or associate? So here's the other one: giving notes. How hard is that? It's pretty hard, because again, the way I would give Kristen notes is probably different than I would give Michelle notes, and the way I would give Michelle notes would be different than I give Daniel notes. So that type of thing. So again, that was seen early on. I promise I have a point to all of this. That was seen early on in my development moving forward. And I think that's, in a nutshell, how I got into assisting initially.
So then you've got the job. So now you're an assistant and associate. Can you talk us through that process, like planning the show, auditioning the show, pro, up to first date?
Yeah. So planning the show, everything leading up to rehearsal, I think, and I love rehearsal, don't get me wrong, but everything leading up to rehearsal, I think, is my favorite part, because that's where all the questions are, and that's where all the research happens, and that's where all the playing for us without the cast happens, which is, to me, very, very exciting. So in my experience, the first thing that usually happens is designers get the first kick at the can, right? Because designers usually have to have their plots in the earliest. So there's usually conversations that happen between the director and the choreographer, mainly the director, when it comes to design and how the show is going to look aesthetically on the stage. We will sit as a team: designers, directors, choreographers, assistants. Sometimes you'll even get the musical director in there. And this is the part I really love, because we just sit there and we talk about the show, and we go from the beginning of the show and we go to the end of the show. Sometimes this can take days, and you just go through each act, each line, and what is what the director is thinking at that moment. And then, like I've said, I love a collaborative room. I've always worked in a collaborative room, so everyone's opinion matters until it doesn't matter. So this is where things start rolling, and all the ideas happen, and you can really start to picture what the show could look like. And again, like I said, we kind of go through Act 1 first. I think the longest this has ever taken is I've sat in a kitchen with a creative team for 5 days straight. And I'm talking from like 10 a.m. to like 10 p.m. And I guess it depends to the scale of the show and all the elements that you have to work with. Not every experience is like that, but I was privileged to have that type of experience in my first kick at the can at being an associate. I was terrified. I was like, oh my God, there's all these people. Should I speak? I don't know. Are they gonna like me? Are they gonna hate me? Again, and it's that imposter syndrome that we talked about earlier. But you're a part of that team, right? And you're there for a reason. And it's important to remind yourself that you are there for a reason. So and that's where all the themes, we start talking about the themes. We start talking about even we even talk about like exits and entrances and how that's going to flow, and what set pieces are being brought on. Even if your team is that organized, you might even be talking about if you have your cast already, who in the cast might be doing that, or how many people you have in the cast even without the numbers. Or the names of the people, that you can also start planning that, saying, okay, we need 3 people on it. Anyway, it makes moving into rehearsal so much easier if you have a great meeting when you're planning the show. Also, this is where all the research happens. So as an assistant, I've had more experience as an assistant choreographer and associate choreographer. Not to say there's not any research involved, but not the same way as an assistant director. For instance, let's talk about Chicago. So like finding out about the 2 actual characters who played Velma and Roxy. They were real people. And knowing the history and knowing the time period and what the world looked like was super exciting moving forward to the show. That was, again, one of my favorite parts, because you feel so powerful because you have all this information that people want. And then I would say moving into just before rehearsal, something called dry tech. So a dry tech is where you will go through, after having all those meetings, after deciding how the show is going to go, is you again move through the show, the sets, with the designer, and how the show is actually going to move. So you go from scene 1, how do we get to scene 1? How do we get into scene 2? How do we move into this dance number? How do we then move into the song? And it's all done with the macabre. And we literally have like little pieces of people and little set pieces, and you move it along so you know exactly what it's going to look like. And that's my experience planning the show. Then comes auditioning for the show, usually. And auditions, I hate. And I'll tell you why I hate them. Because you meet so many talented people, right? And you walk into a room, and I have a huge heart. And I want to give everybody the job. But unfortunately, not everybody can get the job. But saying that, planning the audition. So after planning the show, you know exactly what you're looking for. You know exactly how many people you need, how many people you're hiring. You know what you're looking at for specific characters. And it's really hard. Here, I'll tell one story. I remember auditioning doing the auditions for Guys and Dolls. And for the female identifying ensemble, we were looking we had 108 people walk through that door. Do you know how many parts were being given? 5, exactly. But yeah, usually it's like 8 counts of 8. You'll do the combination. You'll set it beforehand. Sometimes I've done it in a hotel room the night before. Sometimes it's 2 weeks prepped. Sometimes I'm doing it on my own, depending on how long you've worked with that choreographer. They might trust you enough to go in on your own to do the auditions, or at least the first leg of the auditions. Then everybody dances, and sometimes there'll be a cut, there'll be a callback. You'll do that. As an assistant or an associate, you're usually the one who demonstrates. And depending on who's in the room, because I think nowadays it's tricky in terms of auditions because everybody wants to be seen. So sometimes you get a really, you get a mixed group in terms of dancer, singer, actor, singer, dancer, all of that sort of stuff. So depending on the group, you might be doing it even when we're trying to select people, once we're performing the combination that the choreographer has taught, or let's be honest, the assistant has taught. And then there'll sometimes be a cut, and there'll be a callback, and this is when the actors, singer, actors, dancers, singer, all the combinations come back and will usually sing their song and read sides. I would be prepared also as an assistant director to read this, to be a reader. And then comes like the selection process, which again is everyone's like, oh, so much fun. No, it's awful. It is really awful because like we just said, there was over 80 people who applied for this position, and you are the 10 who got in, but there are 70 plus people who didn't. So that's the hard reality of the industry. I understand that, but in my experience, you don't feel it more than when you're on that creative team, because you know people, and it's just difficult. So that there we have the selection process, and then there's a lot of things you're looking for. I think we're also we're making sure that our audiences feel represented. So people who are coming to see the show, we want to make sure that they are represented. I think we're really starting to see that happen. I know we still have a long way to go, but I know I think we're starting to, and I think we have a lot of strong advocates for it. So what has to happen now, in my opinion, is we need to see that same representation on creative teams, because that is really going to help us move forward. Okay, audition the show. Then we have pre-production. Pre-production is my favorite part, because again, this is where you really you get into a rehearsal hall and you start making the thing. We're doing the thing. And I would say in a musical, this is probably where a lot of your dance routines are prepped ahead of time. Because then when you get into the room, you don't have to worry about prepping those routines, because sometimes you get caught up. And rehearsal, as we know, rehearsal processes move very, very quickly. We're not all as privileged as the Stratford Festival and the Shaw Festival to have time to do this. So this is where an assistant and an associate is extremely important. Okay, then first day of rehearsal. I would say as an assistant associate, it feels like you're just part of the cast, right? Everyone's introducing each other. They introduce you. It feels good to be introduced. I won't lie. It does feel good to be introduced as an assistant or associate. You feel important for about 2 seconds, and then you move on. Then we move into rehearsal. As I was talking before, usually because of your prep work, rehearsals hopefully run very smoothly because of the amount of prep that you've done moving into this. Now, as we start to get the cast, as an assistant and associate choreographer, and also as an assistant director, this is where really good notes come in. So formations, what the choreography is. I was never one who needed to write down choreography. I could usually keep it in my head, but I needed to write down formations and how that kind of flowed throughout the piece. As an assistant director, I wrote down a lot, because our process was we usually had character chats on the first few days of rehearsal, where we really talk about their characters and what the actors thought of their character and where they fit into the big picture of the show. So I took very good extensive notes. Why, you'll see in a second. And then usually you'll just read through the scene with all the characters involved, and then it'll get up on its feet. And like I said, that's where you really write down the blocking. And also when the director starts talking about certain intentions and whatnot, and the motivation of the scene, and it's important to write that down as well as I move forward and start talking about understudies. Because it's one thing to be sitting in the room and listening to it, and then it's another thing to remember it 3 months, 2 months, whatever, down the road. So again, that's where important notes and detailed notes are important. Also, something that I was responsible for in rehearsal was, because I'm a decent reader of music. I'm not very good, but I'm pretty good. Is we would add, sometimes for dynamics, we would add in specific shots in the percussion to help elevate the dance numbers. So I was always responsible for writing that in my book. So in my score, I would have that down. So when we got to like previews or onto the stage, and we weren't hearing something, I could then communicate that to usually the associate conductor. Yeah, that was the one. That was the most because where's that shot? Where's that shot? I'm like, I don't know, I don't know, but I have it here. It's written. They just didn't play it. And then we move into tech, and I would always be a part of lighting sessions and sound sessions. So usually they're done outside of rehearsal time. So lighting designers will set their plots ahead of time, and then usually we would do, I think it was like 3 to 4 hour sessions from like 7 p.m. till 11 p.m. where we would sit and we would just look at lights. And this is also not needed, but I was always one of those people who would write down where those LXQs would happen. So if we didn't see it in a preview, then I knew where that was. If there was a sound cue, that you can't really miss a sound cue. If it's not there, you're gonna notice. And then once you get to like cue to cue, I've always worked in processes where that becomes a big day for an assistant and associate to get notes out that haven't necessarily been communicated. That's definitely a place where like I would pull in like 20,000 steps, just like and go and go and go and go and go. And then and then you get into like tech dresses and whatnot, and then previews where a lot of the notes will happen leading up to the opening of a show. And some directors will just like, you'll write it down and they will ask you right then and there and communicate it to the actors themselves. Some you'll take it away. I usually type them all up and then hand it to the director, choreographer, the following day. They would read it. I found sometimes, and rightfully so, directors and choreographers with certain leads would like to give the notes directly to them as opposed to doing it in a note session. The other thing that I didn't mention going back is I was also responsible as the assistant director for my director's score and script. I would label it. I would write in certain directions. That is something, I'm sure that's not the case for everyone, but that was definitely something that was a part of my job. So when I would get there in the morning, if we were working on a specific scene, I would have that page open to for the director so they didn't have to go searching through it. Again, maybe it's above and beyond, but it's something that I saw my predecessors do, so it's something that I continued doing. Again, it makes things a little bit easier, but not necessarily. Then after opening, in festivals, I've had this experience where you are the assistant and the associate, the dance captain, the associate music director are all responsible for teaching the understudies. So you will get the understudies up to speed, and that's where those notes really, really come in handy, because you're able to communicate choreography, blocking, intention, all of those things because of the notes that you took, and blocking too, that you took earlier on. Sometimes you'll get rehearsal ahead of time, sometimes not, which makes no sense because we all know we preview, and in previews people go down, but that's the way it goes. Now, in commercial theater, I've only had one experience in commercial theater. I did the producers back in 2001, and in terms of the hierarchy, like we had, sorry, that's a horrible word to use, but in terms of the way things were set up, we had an associate choreographer who would come in and teach the exact show that was set on Broadway. And then the same thing with the associate director. There was a dance captain who would maintain the dance numbers, and I had a resident director choreographer, someone who could do both. You don't always get both, but that's generally how an associate choreographer fit in commercial theater specifically. Now with regional theater, I have never, and this is where I'm hoping that this is going to change, is I've never ever had an assistant even being in a cast, had an assistant involved in the show. So that's where I'm excited about hopefully this changing, where we can, because we all know that that's probably the place that you need it the most, because your time is limited and you need that extra bit of support moving forward. We all know you do that contract for a regional theater. Sometimes you have 2 weeks of learning it, teching it, and happy opening. Very, very difficult, and that's where you really need an assistant. But again, in my experience, that has never ever happened. Okay, that was longer than 5 minutes. I'm sorry, Jen.
No, you got the next section in there, Steve. You did great. You did great. And I was just going to say, and wouldn't it be wonderful? Yes, round of applause for our Steve-O. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we had assistants and associates at every theatre across the country? Let's see what we're doing here. Steve, the last thing that you wanted to speak about, because Steve and I spoke prior to this interview, and we discussed taking ego out of the room and keeping it professional for yourself and your director and choreographer. So can you talk us through how to set safe boundaries and create a brave space?
I love this question because I hate this question. So how do we create that safe space? Communication is one. What do you need? How can I best assist you? I know me, whenever I'm running a room, I always like to start by like we did today, having some kind of a conversation, like, what did you have for breakfast? Just to kind of like break the ice a little bit. And then when I'm teaching things, I like to make the mistakes so that people feel comfortable making mistakes in the room. So I'll always say something like, okay, so can we do that again for me? Because I really shot the bed. Can we, stuff like that. So you're showing people that it's okay to make mistakes so that people can be their bravest. Because when are we our most creative? We're our most creative when we feel safe and confident, right? And creating that type and leading or exemplifying that, I think, is where it starts. Room agreements, I think, are also a very important thing to create that brave space, so everyone is on the same page with how we're moving forward, so that there's no surprises, and we've talked about it ahead of time, so everyone again feels comfortable being their best self and their most creative self in that room. And also encouraging people to have ideas, and I think that's also important communication with, in my opinion, with your assistant and associate, because it empowers them in the room so that the cast also trusts them. And when you feel wanted, when you feel important, when you feel like you're a part of the process in the room as an assistant and associate, you're going to have better ideas because you feel comfortable to communicate that. And then also the cast, if they're seeing that, they're also going to feel that way. And ego, there's no place for it, in my opinion, because we are all people at the end of the day, and we all have a common goal. And getting to that common goal is important, and I believe that we can do that, keeping ego out of it, and also being kind human beings.
So now that you've kind of set those safe boundaries, how do you ask smart questions of your director or choreographer?
Any question I think is important, and any question is smart. I think a lot of those questions should happen before getting into the room, but questions always come up while you're in the room. I think it's timing too. Like if they're in the middle of like blocking a scene, you're not going to be like, is it okay if so and we all have common sense, and when to ask those questions, I think, is the most important, because every question is important, and I think I remember doing a lot of asking before rehearsal, a lot of asking at lunch, and then a lot of asking afterward. There's sometimes questions will come up within the cast that need to be immediately brought up to a director choreographer, because sometimes that's a safety issue. But again, I think use your best judgment in terms of who you're working with, and when you're asking those questions. But yeah, every question I think is important, because if you want to ask it, then it's important to you.
Okay, so now that we've set safe boundaries, we've asked smart questions at the right times. How do we remain open and collaborative?
Again, I think it's just that communication, right? How do we remain openly collaborative? It is that communication, saying like, "Oh, I have this idea. What do you think?" But again, knowing your timing. It's like when someone is setting something initially and you see something, it's like maybe that's not the time. Maybe, oh, I saw this. What do you think of? What do you think about this? Or I have this idea. I found this research. But again, it's always being keeping those lines of communication open. I think communication is key. I was always afraid to ask questions because, again, not really knowing what was expected of the position at first, you're very fearful to ask questions. But I found that worse because, again, you get to a point you're like, fuck, I should have asked that question, because now this has happened and I could have fixed this a long time ago. But again, remaining collaborative, I think, also depends on the director choreographer. If they want to allow you to work through the space that or work that way in the space, I think you're always going to feel like it's remained collaborative, because sometimes there's a bit of a shock. You go from pre-pro to like in the rehearsal and you're like, what happened to my voice? And that, again, it's what kind of room is being led, and what kind of room they want. And again, it's not right or wrong. It's just how people want to run their room.
Thanks, Steve Cota. So, a couple of the things that we chatted about today. So, we talked about work ethic and dealing with different personalities, and being a kind human as an assistant and associate. Just, it goes such a long way. Watching somebody in an audition informs you of what the show could be like. I loved that one. As an assistant director, be prepared to read. A director choreographer will look to you in pre-pro, so your input is invaluable. Prepare your artistic voice. Once we move into rehearsals, it's not about you, it's about the actors and their process. I loved that one. Into rehearsals, your detailed notes are so important. Your LX cues, your sound cues, your character notes, your blocking, all of that is essential. When you're in cue to cue, get those notes out, support your director and choreographer. And then as an assistant director choreographer, you're going to be responsible for the understudies and swings and getting them all up to speed. So your notes about intention, blocking, all of those things are just absolutely essential to keeping that show running. Having a conversation with your director and choreographer and setting boundaries for yourself. I loved that. Is so important. That sets you up for success. It's okay to make mistakes so that other people feel safe to make mistakes as well. Room agreements are an important practice. Encouraging ideas from your assistant or associate as you move into a director or choreographer is so important. Know when to ask those smart questions and be a kind human. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Cota!
Sounded so much better when you said it.
Get out of town. So good, Steve. Do you have any like just little final words that you wanted to give us before we jump off?
Yes, I'm just really excited about the future of our industry. I really am. I teach the TDS program at U of T. I teach them dance, the fourth year specifically. I also teach fourth years styles and showcase over at Sheridan College. And I've done that now for a couple of years, and I'm just really excited about the voices that we have coming up, because I think the industry right now is kind of like this a little bit, and I'm really excited because like I was also fortunate enough to be on the selection committee for this program, and just reading what people's ideas for their room, people's ideas for the industry, people's ideas for how they want to be leaders in this industry. I'm super excited because I feel like we are in good hands. Choosing education before professional theater has really opened my eyes to the possibilities of what theater is going to be in the future. I forgot for a while why I started this in the first place. And then I got to teaching and being amongst people who are truly, truly, truly passionate about this industry. And it reminded me why I started this in the first place. So thank you all again for reminding me why I started this in the first place.
That was the wonderfully kind-hearted Steve Cota, and that's a wrap on our first episode of this Assistant and Associate series in tandem with the Canadian Guild of Stage Directors and Choreographers. In today's episode, of course, we talked about being an assistant or an associate. So next week, we are coming at you with the legendary Tracy Fly talking about being a director. So stay tuned, legends. We are demystifying those secrets of the industry and making sure that it's out there and accessible to absolutely bloody everyone. So we hope you enjoyed it. We hope you learned something today. If you feel so inclined, make sure you give us a share, a rate, or review. It helps people find the pod, and we appreciate it. All right. Where do we find the people? If you want to keep up with Steve Cota, you can find him at Cota7692 on Insta, or for his educational theatre training, he is at inthewings.online. You can also give the Canadian Guild of Stage Directors and Choreographers a follow on Insta at official CGDC and have a look at all the work we're doing over there. And you know where to find us, legends. We're on Insta at Tits and Teeth Podcast. Our website is titsandteethpodcast.com. No matter what you're facing out there today, legends, make sure you keep those tits up, those teeth out, and have a bloody great day.